all about one thing. We are about nutrient sufficiency. We are about putting the nutrients back into your body that people have no idea that they're even missing. We just walk around more and more and more nutrient deficient. Supplements, if they can get that level up, fantastic, do it.
The consumer's smart enough to know, I like this product, it really works for me, so I'm going to trust this company and use their other products. If this company has one product and they're just pushing it out in the market because of Dr. Oz, or they're making ridiculous claims, or they have proprietary blends, then I would run.
There's like some outlandish, outrageous claims out there across the board with the supplement industry, and it's frustrating to me. And you get customers saying, why is this better than that? You start to look at these things and like, these people are way over-promising.
Welcome to episode 3, and I have to tell you, I am so honored to take this entire journey with you. I know that in episode 1 or 2, you might have skipped or missed some aspects of it, and I have to tell you, this is information that you'll want to go back, you'll want to revisit it, which is why you should own Supplements Revealed. It's easy to own, there are multiple packages, you can just pick the one that's right for you, get it, and let it continue to bring you vital information that for years will contribute to your life and your health. Enjoy this episode. One thing I've observed over the past years is how there's been this huge adoption of bone broth and how healthy it is for us. Next up, we have the nutritionist for the Dr. Oz show, Dr. Kellyann Petrucci, and she wrote the New York Times best-selling book, The Bone Broth Diet. She's an expert in this area, and I can tell you that when you hear what she has to say, you're gonna put some of it to use pretty immediately. Amazing stuff. Tune in for this interview. Kellyann, thanks for taking some time to have this conversation.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about your journey. How'd you get started in all the stuff you're doing?
Well, it's almost like I didn't have a choice. It's definitely the through line in my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
When other girls were on the beach and they were reading all kind of, Brides magazine or whatever it was, here I was with Diabetes Journal with Mary Tyler Moore on the cover. It's always where I gravitated towards health and wellness and really bringing that different level of a fusion of life to your body in any way that you can, whatever suits you and your life and your body.
So you had this as a teenager, this predilection?
I really did.
Yeah.
I was reading labels when I could barely read. Truly. It really was, God's direction. It really was. Everything I thought about had to somehow circled back to health. So it was always a fascination.
And then, okay, so now you're out of high school. What was your path?
So actually, before I was out of high school, I signed these papers to go on this work program for high school, and I would go to school in the morning, and I would work at Princeton University's health services for the rest of the day. I started doing this at 15. So at 15 years old, I started working with all these clinicians and learning about triaging and patients and all of that. And I did that till I graduated high school.
And then you got out of high school, and what direction did you take?
So I went to Temple University. I got some really good sciences under my belt, got a master's degree at St. Joseph's University, got more under my belt, ended up going to chiropractic school at Logan College of Chiropractic, and then went to naturopathic school, a college of naturopathic medicine in Regent's Park, London, England. And then from there, I studied Swiss medicine. I studied that through doctors at the Paracelsus Clinic, through the Marian Foundation. So at the end of the day, at the end of all that, I became a Swiss-trained doctor, so to speak. So,
well, not only Swiss, you had all this other training too.
Yes.
So what was it that, it sounds like to me you had to be searching because you didn't stick in one place and then stick at the next place. And you just kept going. What do you think you were looking for?
So I didn't really find peace in my practice until I really found the body's chemistry and the body's energy. What I discovered through all of this at the end of the day is that we're like big balls of energy. We're megahertz. That's what we are. And things affect that. And you have to be aware of what affects that, the cellular matrix. So when for instance, I became a chiropractor and I loved it, but I was more interested in not, okay, well, I'm going to adjust this and this is how it lines up and this is the x-ray. I was interested in, oh my gosh, how does that affect your thyroid? And then what does your thyroid do when that happens? What happens when you adjust down here? Oh, that affects your small intestines. Well, how does that affect everything? What is this orchestra? Well, how does this all play into each other? And after all of these years, even starting out early on in the clinic and learning about triaging and all of that, and learning more about patients, learning about listening, learning about really how to look at a patient and start feeling what they're feeling and starting to really develop their needs. That's what that taught me. So this kind of all went on, and at the end of the day, after all of this, after seeing lots of patients, all of it, I said, my gosh, what it really comes down to so much is the 6 inches between our ears. That's what I really learned. And I learned that affects our cellular matrix. Moreover, and more importantly, our cells literally communicate. They talk to one another. And it's really important that you get your cells talking to one another in a really positive manner, because your cells can work for you or against you. And then your cells, to take it even one step further, they communicate with others. So you want to keep this circle working for your benefit, because if you get it working for your benefit, pow, you can't understand the things you can attract and who you can be and what you can have, and it all comes full circle. However, if you don't really start understanding this communication process, quite the opposite can happen.
So how does this play into this view of reality, if you will?
Yeah.
How does this play into your activities now?
I think about the things I say. I think about the things that I do. And everything that I do in my life, I think about it more along the lines of, how does this affect my cells? How is this going to really affect my cells? Because that's what I really learned in practice. And it's funny because when I was studying all of this Swiss medicine, and I did a lot with Chinese medicine, I learned a lot of those diagnostics. A lot of the testing that made the most sense to me, and a lot of the testing that really seemed to move patients in the right direction, had to do with, what's happening along the meridian lines, or what's happening, what is your body's pathways telling you? And so the foods that I use, even the foods that I think about and I use for myself and patients, I think along those lines. What does this do to the cellular matrix? How does it affect it? Does it bring it alive? Does it give you that level of energy and spirit that you can really have?
How does bone broth play into all this?
Because out of everything I've used in practice, and you know as well as I do, you are exposed to everything. I spray vitamins, this magical elixir. When you're in practice and you're in practice, somebody is knocking on your door all of the time, wanting to sell you some kind of goods. And you have to have the discretion and the level of, I guess, really maturity in practice to know what's good, what's not good, what's just a trend that's going to pass. And I was blown away when I started using bone broth. And I thought, my gosh, it's doing all of these things. Doing all of these things. And myself, when I turned 40, I hit a wall. And I thought, gosh, how can this be? I understand primal nutrition as it is, and I practice these things. I'm exhausted. And all anyone ever said to me was, well, you're a mother now. You have kids. Of course you're tired. And again, it goes back to that theory. Well, if I'm tired at 40, everybody should be tired at 40, but they're not. So that's not really accurate. What is it? And so I started using bone broth on myself first, and then others. And I thought, oh my God, what is happening here? People their skin's better. They feel better. They're starting to lose, inches. And really, it's like the combination. It's like if you believe that beauty is really how you feel and how you heal, because that to me is beauty. Beauty is how you feel and how you heal. That is the essence of what bone broth is.
Why does bone broth have that effect? Like what does it contain that makes this stuff happen?
A few things. So one of the things that I find in a lot of patients, and even when you look at empirical data and you study, there's different kind of testing that we do that test the levels of your nutrition in your body. We're very demineralized, so to speak. A lot of people are lacking a lot of minerals. Bone broth happens to have that. protein. It's a really good source of protein. It's a very upbuilding source of protein. So that's really beneficial for people. But like the big wow is the fact that it's got collagen in there, and cooked collagen is gelatin. And here's where the magic takes place. If you get a sunburn, what is the first thing we always reach for? Aloe vera.
Aloe vera, yeah.
Right. And we put it on there because it's going to soothe our skin and it's going to heal our skin. And guess what? That's exactly what gelatin happens to do for your gut. So that sealing and that healing, that really getting your intestines rock solid like that, that helps you with just about everything. And that's why when I really learned this, and I learned the properties in there, my gosh, all of these great properties, that's when I started realizing that's why people are perking up. Literally, it's like a wilted flower that starts to bloom. And I am effusive about this, and it's not crazy talk. You know, everyone has their wares, and they say, well, this is the best. I've just seen this on so many people, and the reason why the bone broth diet became a New York Times bestseller, the reason why it sold so much and became literally a whole new food category is because of what I'm saying. And it's not going away. We can check the Google Analytics. We can see it's still holding strong because it has these properties in it. And when you have these properties in something that's high nutrition, low calories, that's the name of the game in nutrition, it's against natural law not to get results.
All bone broths are not the same, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think the first thing to say is when we're talking about broths, I want everyone to understand it's very different than a can of soup that you would buy. So a can of soup, they flash cook, and it doesn't have the minerals and all the vitamins in there. So it's very different. So I want people to understand the soups that you buy in a can, that's not what we're referring to. You can't get that same kind of stock in them. So what you want to look for is bone broth that gels. So if you're looking on the label, of course, organic, all that, we know that. That's the good stuff.
But let's not pass over that too quick, because if you're getting bone broth from sources that are from animals that maybe are not healthy, et cetera, which I think that's in the marketplace, that can actually have the opposite effects.
It transfers to the health of the animal, transfers over to you. It's indisputable evidence. We know this for a fact. So you want to get really clean food in general, particularly your meat products should be clean.
Right.
So you want to look for that on the label. And the second thing, when you get it home, you can do the little test. If you find by the way, there are so many good bone broth products on the market now. When I first started talking about this and doing this, it really was a stretch for anyone to find anything good. So most people were cooking bone broth,
right,
which is great. But now most people actually buy it because it's so easy. So if you take the bone broth and you put it in the refrigerator, after you cook it, put it in the refrigerator. If that sucker gels up really well, you get the wiggle jiggle, you know it's a great broth because they have a lot of gelatin in it, because that's how gelatin behaves.
And that's one of the characteristics you'd look for. I imagine you want it to be organic.
You really do.
And is a part of why this is having such a big influence culturally right now because most people's guts are just in bad shape?
I think there's a lot of reasons for it. It became kind of a cool product. And people started really loving this product and the use of it in so many ways. And I think the reason why, again, is because millennials love it. So you have younger people who are really grasping onto this as the cool thing. And then you have the 40-plus women that are saying, I look banging when I drink this stuff.
Right.
I look so good when I drink this stuff. And then you've got millennial-based people that are saying, I know this is like revolutionary. Like this stuff is good for me, and I know it. And so you have really such a broad scope of people that are enjoying this now. And let's face it, if it didn't do something for us, it wouldn't be where it is. It just wouldn't. We wouldn't have the sales that we have overall.
What's the recommended consumption? So now let's say I've really never have done bone broth before, so this is going to be new to me.
Yes.
I'm excited about the prospects.
Wonderful.
And but now, do I do this daily? Do I do it once a week? How do I consume it? What's the advice there?
Well, if you're new to bone broth, I always recommend you start with chicken because the smell in the house can be really strong if you're going beef or another way. So start with chicken and see how you like that. And the basic prescription. Now, we haven't tested this out in large groups, but what I've found through practice is about 2 cups a day is a good dose for people. However, a lot of people are using it in the most interesting way, which is through fasting.
Okay. Talk about that.
So in the bone broth diet, 2 days a week, what we did was all day long, you sip on bone broth, and you have one light meal at 7 o'clock. So it's a 5-2 type of plan, meaning that 5 days a week, you're going to eat a certain way, a cleaner diet, and then 2 days a week, you're going to do this intermittent fasting with bone broth. And this is, I think, the best use of bone broth because you can get so many of the same effects that you would on any other kind of fast, but you're comfortable. So all these people that have come to me for years and said, I tried to fast, I can't fast, blah, 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 fast. I would say, but the value is so high. There's such high value. You're coming in with eczema. You're coming in with extra weight. You're coming in and problem after problem after problem, achy joints and bloating and all of these immune type of problems that we see. When your body has inflammation, all are remedied through so much with fasting. So I thought, how can I get people to fast? All these complaints, my blood sugar, it tanks, I don't feel well, I can't do it, I work, I have a life. Bone broth is a terrific way to get those results and be comfortable at the same time.
So when doing that, you're saying you on the days that you're fasting with bone broth.
You're fasting with bone
and
broth.
you're sipping it all day and as much as you want.
You're sipping it all day. Again, so here's the situation with bone broth. If you break it down, there's nothing in there that's going to hurt you.
Right.
We have really looked, and we've looked at so many different products on the market. And so, again, you're talking about high nutritional value and low calories. So sipping on this all day, you just have to watch, the salt content. You want to make sure that the products that you use, if you're going to continue to do it over and over, it's got the right kind of salt because salt can kill you or make you well.
Right.
The right kind of salt leaves your cells very differently than an iodized type of salt, which stays in the cell and that causes
So
hypertension.
what would you look for on the label for the right kind of salt?
Okay, you want to look for something that's a mineralized salt. So it's going to be, the best way to judge this is either going to be a light gray color or a light pink color. So there's plenty of products on the market that you'll see. But that has minerals in them, and it doesn't have the caking agents and all the other things that kind of mess that whole thing up.
So do you recommend buying the bone broth organically without salt and then adding your own to it?
If you can, but it's going to be very hard for you to find a bone broth with no salt.
Okay, so you just have to make sure they have the right kind of salt in there.
And a lot of ways to do this is to find a brand you love and trust. When you find a brand that is completely aligned with your values, so if you get my bone broth, for instance, it's going to have the right kind of salt in that, and that's really important.
And so I also see that there's bone broth protein powders. Is that equivalent?
It's fine. So look, here's the deal. There's nothing that is the same as bone broth, the frozen bone broth that you can buy or making it at home. There's nothing as good as that.
I see non-frozen versions also. Is that okay? Or?
They're totally fine. There's a lot of products that are on the marketplace that dehydrating would be very hard to do. Bone broth was one of those products that you can dehydrate and get the same value. Again, close value, I will say, because the honest truth is nothing is going to serve you as well as that hot cup of bone broth that you either make yourself or you buy frozen that was made, in a big pot.
So if I see liquid bone broth that's in a jar that's not frozen and sold, that I probably would prefer a frozen version. Like, does yours come frozen?
Mine comes frozen.
Okay,
yes.
so it should be frozen. Then when
Should
it
be
defrosts,
frozen.
it should be all jelly.
All jelly and jiggly.
Yeah, jelly and
It's
jiggly.
the only place you want jiggles. Let's face it.
And then you just heat it and
You
sip
heat it
in.
and you enjoy it and then flavor it. So here's how you make bone broth really interesting. I call it broth loading soups. I have a ton of them in my cookbooks. You can put all kind of things in soups and actually make them a meal. There's so many people I know that keep a pot of bone broth on all the time. So I work with a lot of celebrities before they do red carpet events. And I am telling you, they love this because it gets the weight off so fast. They do these bone broth fasts.
Wow.
And your skin it's like your skin gets really plump. And if you're worried about wrinkles and all of that, no matter what you do to your skin to get rid of wrinkles or anything, you need a good foundation.
So it's kind of a twofer, hey, it's got the
Totally
cosmetic.
a twofer. I say that all the time. It's a twofer all the way. It's the best twofer out there.
That's great. You get healthy and you look good.
And you look good, because that really is what beauty is.
Well, it's interesting. We're laughing about it, but a lot of people do very toxic things for their appearance.
Oh my gosh, this is such a passion of mine. Yes, people do very toxic things for their appearance. What if you could create a beautiful foundation from head to toe?
Right.
Because the cartilage that we find in a lot of bones, which is where all this collagen comes from, It happens, just so happens to make your hair thick and shiny. It just so happens to make your skin glow. It just so happens to heal all your joints and everything that produces all these good things. So you want everything to be upbuilding in the body, upbuilding, upbuilding, upbuilding. That's what all of this does. So what if from head to toe you had this naturally beautiful form? And when you're talking about losing weight, there's all different kind of ways to lose weight. There's ways to lose weight and look pretty darn, can I say it?
Yes.
Ugly.
Yeah, you said it.
Okay? And here's one of the reasons why. When you starve the skin cells, the skin cells are like bouncy balls. So when you starve them, they become like deflated balls, and that's your cells. That is your cells. So a lot of people lose weight, and there's like, what? They lost weight, but I can't look at them anymore. Like your face doesn't look good anymore.
Right.
You don't need to sacrifice one for the other. It's about really naturally building this beautiful foundation that you can work with from head to toe. And then you can get creative. If there's different things that you love. Oh, I love to, wear those those eyelash extensions, or I love to do, but you have to have the foundation. That's timeless beauty.
Right.
That's how you become that beautiful, timeless woman or man.
Or man, exactly.
man.
Hey, don't leave us out.
Yeah, I won't.
So
You matter.
I should hope so. Should I worry about how much I can heat my bone broth? In other words, does it denature a certain?
It does not denature. We've tested this out quite a bit. It does not denature. Most people like it really warm. I mean, it just warms you from your head to your toes. It's a really wonderful thing. And if you're sick, my kids now are so programmed. If they're sick or they're starting to feel sick, they ask for bone broth. I mean, it's that great, great grandmom's healing remedy from, and by the way, I did start the bone broth revolution. I will own that, but I didn't create bone broth. It has been around since the primal days. They used to make bone broth in the gut of animals. That's how they did. I mean, it was way back. So we have used this for years and years. We used it as a sustainable food, and there's, because we use all parts of the animal. But what I'm saying is, even outside of all of that, the consciousness that's behind this provides you with such healing and such beauty that, I mean, it's a win-win situation. How could you not want it?
Is the 5-2 lifestyle that you talked about, where you're fasting on bone broth 2 days a week, should that be like year-round or just through episodes of time and then cycle off of it? How do you recommend it?
I recommend it for most people as a cycle. So here's the deal. The first thing you want to do is get that inflammation down. If you don't know if you have high inflammation, some of the things that you might experience, you might have achy joints, you may have some bloating, autoimmune diseases that so many people have. That's a sign of this. Or you can get a C-reactive protein test. It's a very simple blood test you can have in your doctor's office. But all of these things mean that you have inflammation, and all of these bone broth, collagen, the gelatin, all of that really pushes all of that down. It's one of my favorite. It's why you get a lot of the reaction from it that you do. That's why. It's all about immunity for us, right? It's all about your immune. How strong is my immune system? How is my immune system working for me? Is it driving things in the right direction? And in order for that to happen, there's a process. Our body's an orchestra. We have to have inflammation down to have immunity high.
How did you happen across all this? I mean, this is like, not as you said, it's been done for many years, into antiquity, the use of bone broth, but suddenly now it's popularized, and you played a very major role in that. So how did you happen? Like, how did the epiphany come?
I'll tell you how it came. So I've been using bone broth for quite some time, and I had just written 5 books with Wiley Publishing. I did not want to look at another book. I did not want to look at a pen, a piece of paper, a computer, nothing. I was done. I basically pubbed about 2 books with a major publisher a year for a couple years. I was at an event, and here I am sitting next to the person from Rudell Publishing. I'm sitting here at this function, and she's sitting there. And I thought, this is interesting. Here it is, like the Rodell Publishing woman. I cannot sit next to her. There's not one part of me that's going to let me sit next to her without pitching something. I don't want to do a book, but I have to pitch something. So I told her, I said, she said, yes, I heard about you and your Paleo for Dummies. Congratulations. And I said, well, that's not going to be anywhere near as big as this next thing. And because I just thought, I know I need to pitch to her. Anyway, she gave me her card. She said, I'll be back in the office on Tuesday. Send me your proposal. So I got on the plane, and I thought I got nothing. I got nothing. Okay, I have been there for you. And I literally put my hands up on the plane like this. And I said, I've been there for you. I have been there for you. I am asking I'm your vessel. What is it that you want me to do? What is it that you want me to do? I am telling you, as sure as I'm standing here, the words bone broth. Bone broth. I heard it as clear as a bell. This is not crazy talk. It said bone broth. I went, oh my gosh, how could I have not? Of course, it's bone broth. I started writing that proposal over the weekend, got the whole proposal written, sent it to my team, did all the graphics, sent it to them. Within 2 seconds, I'm telling you, I hit send. There was not a minute that went by that it came right back, said, we want an exclusive. Wow. So bone broth diet happened. And that's how, I thought, it's so obvious. That is the thing that has impressed upon me, and understand my training, understand every modality. I mean, I was learning about neurotherapy in the 90s. Like, I studied European medicine where they were doing the most unbelievable therapies 10 years before we had it here. Why bone broth? Like, why? What? It's because it's just that darn good. And as a woman who is, let's say, progressing on in life, you got to have everything. You got to have the 1-2 punch. You got to have anything in your arsenal that you can have, you get. You just do. So again, for me though, it comes down to all that's great. Now I love all that. I love fashion, and I love all of that. Love it. I'm so inspired by it. However, I want to have a foundation that I know is rock solid, and bone broth is it's like the foundation.
It's interesting, Freud is once quoted saying, "It seems to be my fate to discover the obvious." Right?
Like that.
And it's exactly what that feels like. Is like saying this was hiding in plain sight. Nobody's talking about it, and now through whatever inspiration came, it struck you, and boy, now look at what's going on in the world. And it's interesting to me from the timing because we had done a whole docuseries on GMOs and looking at how it's destroying people's guts, and there needed to be a solution brought into the world that can help heal all this. Which, of course, what's a greater solution than saying let's get some bone broth in people and start to heal those guts. And
what's fascinating, even on a different level, I was giving a talk. It was at a hospital, and I had the person who was ahead of the whole GI surgery team say, I just want to let you know that I recommend this to all of my patients now. There's another a doctor, a dermatologist in Newport, and said, I just want to let you know, before I do anything with my patients, I put them on a 10-day protocol of bone broth. I mean, there's story after story after story of doctors who are using this, again, what's the word? As the foundation. You need this foundational core to keep you on fire.
So this is a big message. How are you getting it out into the world?
Any way that I can, through patients, through my website, drkellyann.com. And I was really lucky enough to be able to catch the eyes of Robin Roberts, who is the anchor at ABC, who fell in love with the bone broth diet and the products. And when I went on the show, Good Morning America, the Dr. Oz people saw me. And from that moment, they scooped me up. So I have been regular, one of his most used regulars or doctors that he trusts on his show. And so I've been really able to show that, hey, listen, I know a lot about nutrition, and this is what is nearest and dearest to my heart.
Well, that's a big megaphone, right? I mean, that platform, the Dr. Oz show really speaks to a wide audience.
Yes.
So, I imagine that you've been getting floods of feedback as far as how people have been responsive to what you're promulgating.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I did a PBS special called 21 Days to a Slimmer and Younger You, and it was a ginormous success, and that was because of bone broth. People looked at this show and they went, what is this? This is bone broth. What's it going to do? And that is what really brought bone broth in front of most households.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this interesting space. Is it a supplement? Is it a food? This is supplements revealed, but the whole context is maybe a bit wider because supplements should come from food. And some people say, well, okay, you need to get them in food. And some people say, no, you can supplement by taking these things, et cetera. Where do you think this fits in that spectrum?
Here's how I feel.
Okay.
We're all about one thing. We are about nutrient sufficiency. We are about putting the nutrients back into your body that people have no idea that they're even missing. I mean, we just walk around more and more and more nutrient deficient. Supplements, if they can get that level up, fantastic, do it. If bone broth can get that level up and get those minerals up, fantastic, do it. It really is a matter of what is best for you. What is best for you? How are you going to get those minerals up? Do you need to take a supplement? Fantastic, go for it. Do you need to, there's so many different vehicles that, that you can get your levels up. For me, I like natural. I like it supernatural. I like it warm. I like it to make me feel good. And again, what you mentioned, I got to have the twofer. New York people, what can I say? One thing is just never good enough. So I'd like to get a lot of things done at once. And for me, that's where I feel like we fall. We all are trying to achieve the same thing, get those levels back up. I mean, we've talked about things like, I know you have, I've learned this from you, vitamin D levels. It's pandemic. And I can just go on and on. So the more you reach those levels of sufficiency, you're going to end up doing things in your life you never even knew you could do or achieve. Because all of a sudden, no matter, I don't care if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it doesn't matter. You're going to have a pep in your step when you start to become who you're designed to be.
Do you think there's some constituents in bone broth that are active in the process that create the results that maybe we don't even know about yet?
I think so. And I think it is etherical in a lot of ways. But I think the fact that it's warm, and I think your cells respond to that really well. I think the fact that there's something that happens to your brain chemistry when there's a certain aroma in front of it. So you're putting an aroma in front of you. You're putting, that warmth in front of you. And there's something to be said energetically about something that has been around. This is a historical medicine.
Yeah.
So even if you're thinking, wow, I heard about this bone broth, I heard about it heals, I heard about it's been around forever, don't think for a minute that's not going to affect what it does to you, because it does.
It's fascinating that you bring up the aroma. Because we've had in this series conversations around aromatherapy or essential oils, and
Yes.
How they impact healing in the body and positive responses. And it's interesting because that seems like its own kind of category with these sort of substances that are popularized with their what's extracted from them and how you smell them and
Yes.
how your body utilizes all that. But the idea of your body smelling something that isn't considered an essential oil, but it having an effect on the body, positive or negative, in this case a therapeutic effect, I think it's a really brilliant insight to say that this is a part of the experience of consuming this.
That's the word. You just hit the word on the head. So I think that's one of the factors that people really need to know. I feel like it's an experience. And to me, that trumps everything. Like, I always want an experience. This is like an experience in food. This is an experience in beauty. This is an experience in nutrition. So for me, supplements is one way. And if that's an experience that you need, hey, I'm on the go, I just need to do this and do that, and I need to be out the door. God bless. For me, I love this whole feel. And so we asked about the broad landscape of this, like, how did this become so popularized? And we talked about many reasons, but again, we're talking about the younger generation. There's something about holding that and like sipping on that where you feel like you rule the world. I'm just telling you, there's something about it that makes you feel good. And again, it goes back to all of it. All of your five senses are kind of engaged in this. And so that's one of the reasons why I believe it works.
So I've been around this stuff, quite a bit, in the whole health and nutrition world. But I have to say that your context and perspective here really, I believe, has deeper insight into the full sphere of what this stuff means, and the idea of the experiential aspects of bone broth. Most people would say, "Oh, it's kind of the smelly stuff that it's good for you, and let's do it." As compared to saying, there's a whole thing here that reaches deep back into our ancestry and then comes forward now into an experience that we can have that can be a twofer and can
Yes.
and can change your life and make things better. So I really appreciate you sharing this with our audience.
It's a joy. It's an absolute joy. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of people out there need gut healing so they can absorb their nutrients properly. Bone broth can play a critical role there. I really enjoyed this interview with Dr. Kellyann. She's one of the preeminent experts in this arena. If you had someone sitting in front of you who is known as the world's best formulator, what questions would you ask him? We have Shawn Wells up next, and many people do refer to him as such. So this is a wide-ranging interview where we cover a lot of topics, looking at supplementation and nutrition. This man is a wealth of information, so get ready to learn a lot of things. Shawn, thanks so much for sitting to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
So you're dubbed the world's greatest formulator. So how did that designation come to you?
It starts with passion. I actually got really interested in supplements back in college. I started working out, going to GNC, taking creatine. My mom was one of those people like back in the 70s that had the tackle box with all the pills in it, and she sold Shackley, the product.
Sure, of course.
She was passionate about it, had me taking, several grams of vitamin C when I was sick, like, the orthomolecular dosing, Dr. Linus Pauling, all that. But in college, I started working out, seeing all these benefits, seeing body changes, and I went to a doctor between my sophomore and junior year, doing a routine physical, and I got talking to him about my love for supplements and that I was going into GNCs and spending like 4 hours in there, like someone might do in a bookstore.
Right.
Like that was my bookstore. And I kept going on and on about how amazing supplements were, expecting this doctor was going to trash them, of course. And instead, he did something that radically changed my life path. He drew out this lifeline, 20 to 80, and he said, why not be happy between here and here? I was in school for business at the time, doing marketing, which I still use, and it was a great school, and I finished up. But it got me thinking, wow, and like this doctor really was giving me permission to pursue my passion. He saw how much I lit up with it, and then I started looking into, okay, can I be a formulator? Is this a thing? And I started researching it and looking at programs, found Chapel Hill, wanted to go there. I had to get about 2 years of school of just straight sciences, 26 credit hours a semester. And I went to UNC Greensboro to get all that. An opposite side of the spectrum of, people saying something that can change your life path for the positive was a guidance counselor there told me, you're a business student taking all these sciences, you will fail and you'll fail miserably, and told me not to do it. And I thought of him every day and got all the classes I need, got into Chapel Hill, got my master's in nutritional biochemistry, RD, then I got a certified sports nutritionist, became a clinical registered dietitian, working in hospitals and nursing homes for about a decade. But during that time, I was working in GNCs, I was online, building up my presence, bodybuilding.com, anti-aging boards, all these things, talking about supplements, becoming a guru, then getting jobs, doing the write-ups, helping do formulations, working at booths, building up my reputation. And then I got a job with Dymatize, very prominent company in sports nutrition. Worked with them, helped move them to sale to post, but we did hundreds of products there. We did private label, contract manufacturing, our own stuff, but we worked with GNC, Smoothie King, Advocare, Vitamin Shop. I was just working for everyone in the industry. I was working in academia, I was patenting ingredients, I was formulating products, speaking all over the world, writing articles, doing podcasts, and I just got out there so much that I think, and I had a clinical background. It was just very unique. I think I had all these pieces. And coming from business school, I knew the marketing, I knew the numbers, I was formulating products that were realistic. So I got this reputation as the world's greatest formulator. Several times I went to go speak, and that was like my intro. Like, we have the world's greatest formulator with us today, and I think it was my passion. It was the broadness of my knowledge and my passion that I want to take every product I make. I never have cut corners. Never, ever have cut corners. If it can't be unique, if it can't be the best, then I'm not making it. I'm not putting my name to it.
So you've seen now some decades then of this industry. How's it changed? Do you think it's getting better? Do you think the trajectory is right, or do you think it's deteriorating?
I think it started out very genuine. And then it got very disingenuous as sports nutrition became involved, and the claims became very wild. And the numbers were staggering in terms of the growth when sports nutrition boomed. But you also saw drugs come in, things like DMAA, ephedrine, prohormones, SARMs, even recently. And those are all either stimulants or anabolic drugs, basically. And that's really tarnished the industry. And I would also say in kind of that profiteering aspect, there's been a lot of proprietary blends. And that's a great way to build in margin. You can list all the ingredients everyone wants to see, but are they in the effective doses? Are they in the right forms? You don't know any of that. It's a prop blend. It means fairy dusting, typically, where you're putting in a little sprinkle of that ingredient, 1 milligram sometimes. You put in 1,000 milligrams of the cheapest ingredient, and you put in 1 milligram of all the ingredients that are expensive. But when someone reads the label, they just think, oh, this company's not going to take advantage of me. All these ingredients I like are here. I've heard of all these. I'll just buy this. This one has it all. You should be worried about a product that has 10, 15, 16, whatever ingredients, because they probably don't have effective doses. If you're taking 1 or 2 capsules and it's got all these ingredients, I doubt it's legitimate. It also adds a lot to stability issues. A lot of these ingredients interact with each other, and you need to do a lot of work on the testing end. So I think the industry is getting better as a whole overall. Things like this are becoming knowledgeable, like hopefully with people like me speaking to you and people becoming more savvy consumers. They're looking for less ingredients. They're looking for, is this the right dose that was in the study? They're looking for, is this the right form? Is this the right part of the plant? Is this the stem, the leaf, the root, all those things? Is there synergy with these ingredients? And then they want to know from that company, is there third-party testing? Where was this ingredient sourced? Was that plant irradiated? There's chain of custody documents that you need to attain. And you as a consumer, I don't know if you know this, you can call these companies and say, I want to see your third-party testing. I want to see your chain of custody documents. You can ask for all that. And there's even a new trend with having a QR code on the product, and you can look up that lot testing, which is amazing. So now that's where the industry is definitely going, where customers can have a lot more access to that testing, to that quality control.
So are there kind of 2 types of people who offer supplements into the market? Is one type kind of like the very science-based that takes the approach that you're talking about? And the other type is maybe fad-based marketers, where they know something's kind of hot right now and they'll do a proprietary blend as you described and really try to create big margins but not really deliver a good product?
100%. And when we saw like the Dr. Oz phenomenon with some ingredient would be mentioned on a show, and then the next day there's a million products out there. They don't have the quality control. They're new, they're flash, they're on eBay or whatever for $10 a bottle. Buy 10 bottles, get 2 free or whatever. If you see that kind of stuff, total red flag. Right. Absolutely. You should be looking for products from companies that have established reputations, that do have the scientific background, have people like me formulating them, that are looking to do the third-party testing, that do have the chain of custody, that do have the lot testing, that maybe do finished product studies, that are easily accessible and are putting the information out there, because they don't worry about being found out. They want to be found out. The good companies want you to dig in, because they're spending, for example, like an ingredient like ginkgo biloba, that's very popular. You can buy like the whole plant ginkgo for, let's say, $25 a kilo. And this is like raw material costs from, all over the world. Probably from China, but certain areas as well, India, different areas, Asia. And it can be $25 for this whole plant, and you can list ginkgo biloba on the bottle, right? So people say, oh, I want ginkgo, that's the right thing. But if you are getting the leaf, and are you getting something that's unadulterated, It's quite common with like the top 10 or 20 ingredients that they spike them with things so that they test out well. And that means adulterated. When you're not listing an ingredient on the bottle and you're adding it to this herb so it tests out better and you can add less of the expensive herb, that's adulteration. That's illegal. But it's very common to have something like that, like where you add quercetin, the Sephora plant, you add it to the ginkgo. And to get an unadulterated ginkgo that tests out, that's quality, that's the leaf, it's like more than 10 times that price. So when we're going to those links to get the best quality, it's expensive. And so you want to be found out. You want the consumers to dig in.
So do you think there's a general theme that you get what you pay for when it comes to supplements, or are a lot of these crappy supplements, they jack up the price because maybe that will make people believe it's higher quality?
That's interesting. I think most of the time you do get what you pay for. The premium products are more expensive, without a doubt. Are there some fringy products that might be charging a bundle just because something's hot and talking about, they have some proprietary crazy bioavailability thing and they have really good marketing and has cool packaging? That does happen.
Yeah.
But if you're going to put that much work into your marketing and your packaging, and I would hope that you get the other piece right, it does happen. But I would say typically the more expensive products, you are getting what you pay for.
Does organic matter or non-GMO matter?
I think so. I don't know if it's from the aspect of you getting the active, no, but what else is in it? Like, are you getting certain heavy metals, which hopefully they're doing testing for? Are you getting certain toxins that are in the soil, that are in the air? I think the more rigorous it is around that plant, the chances are if you're already doing non-GMO and organic, then you're looking into irradiated. You're looking into rotating these crops. You're looking into making sure these plants are unadulterated in every way. And you have all the documentation in place. The soil is great. Like, you're taking pride in this ingredient. And when you take pride in it and you work hard on it, you want everyone to know. There's no secrecy. So yeah, like if someone's going to that length for their herbs, you can guarantee that all the other things are probably in place too.
One thing that I notice is that when I'm looking at, and let's say that we're talking about high quality, formulators and products, and they might have a catalog, some companies, of dozens, maybe even in the hundreds of products that are formulated that they offer. And as each one is explained to me, it's like, well, I need that one. Oh yeah, that one sounds great. I need that. How do we know? It's like you could take everything because everything's got a good story behind it. So here I am as a consumer saying, I kind of want all those benefits I keep hearing from all these things, but certainly it's not practical for me to try to take everything that there is. So what consideration should a consumer have? Assuming now we're quality, let's say that, okay, we say, okay, get rid of all the crap supplements that are out there and we're now looking in the quality category. How do I decide what are the best things for me?
There is a sea of supplements out there, and I know it feels very overwhelming for most people. And that's where I think I'm going to say, like, speaking to someone like me and hopefully like the work that we're doing together is educating people on what is. It's not like what's good and what's bad. Like you said, like there's data on tons of things.
Yeah.
It's what's good and what's best. And I think, like someone like me, I would formulate only with what's best. I want to have the most bang for the buck. I want to have the best possible product, that if we put my product side by side in a study with anyone else's, that mine will win. Why? Because, and it also comes down to, like we were talking about, that it's not just having the ingredient in there and even that ingredient being quality. It's the right doses. It's maybe looking at bioavailability. You can have things that enhance and protect those ingredients. And then the synergy of those ingredients together. You want to make sure, like, just because I formulate, and this has happened to me many times, I formulate with 5 ingredients that all have data, I use the right form, the right dose, there's no guarantee that when I put them all together that there's clear synergy. You would think that would be the case. It's possibly the case, especially if I've thought through that each of the 5 have 5 different mechanisms Like that's where like a formulator can really help. It's not just 5 ingredients that work on your eyes or your brain. It's 5 different mechanisms, so each ingredient I picked is the best one for each mechanism. Sometimes it's just like, it's called polypharmacy, like in the drug world. Like you don't know the drug-to-drug interaction if you have 5 drugs together. There's no study on that, right? But at least if we take these 5 nutrients that are in the supplement and we do a finished product study on them, then we can say, yes, there's synergy. Yes, there's action above and beyond what we see with each individual ingredient. Now, is it known that certain ingredients might interact? Yeah, potentially. It wouldn't make sense to say maybe use like whey protein plus BCAAs plus, all these things together. Like you probably want to space them out because they have some similar benefits. It just depends on dosing, maybe. Like especially if you're using like 50 grams of protein. If you were going to use BCAAs with the protein, you'd lower your dose. So there are things like an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor, like huperzine A, that you wouldn't want to take every day. When you inhibit, acetylcholine is like a key neurotransmitter. And when you take something like this every day, you can actually get toxicity. And yet you see this out on the market all the time, often combined with a choline product that is going to have synergy in the short run, but in the long run, that can create some issues. So yeah, it helps if you know what you're doing with these things, and hopefully that's where working with a really good company that has a good formulator, putting out good products, great reputation. I think the consumer's smart enough to know, I like this product. It really works for me. It's experiential. This company has a good reputation. They're doing all the extra steps. They're not making ridiculous claims. So I'm going to trust this company and use their other products. And I think that's fair. If this company has one product and they're just pushing it out on the market because of Dr. Oz, or they don't have the credibility, or they're making ridiculous claims, or they have proprietary blends, then I would run.
Yeah. Are there staples that almost every person should have as a regular part of their supplementation?
Yes.
What are they?
Let's see. Creatine is, most people think that's for bodybuilders, and it does help with lean mass accretion, putting on lean body mass muscle. It does help with power and strength in the gym. It's a buffer. But what it also does is it helps with cognitive function and protects the eyes. And it actually helps with bone mass as well. It's a unique methylator, and methylation's a really important process, and there's a lot of errors that can happen with methylation that could lead to DNA damage, that could lead to cancer and things like that. So creatine, I feel like, is almost one of those nutrients that should be in a multivitamin. It's that important.
Now, this is interesting because a lot of times people say, well, that will hurt your kidneys if you take that as a supplement. So what's the story there, or what are the right amounts of creatine?
Yeah, that's just an ongoing confusion myth. It's because a marker of renal damage, kidney damage, is creatinine, and that's a byproduct of creatine breakdown. And when you take more creatine exogenously outside of the body in supplement form, you actually get more creatinine in your urine. So when it looks high on a lab, they think kidney damage, but it has nothing to do with that.
So basically, then people taking creatine on an ongoing basis, if it does raise their creatinine, shouldn't be worried about it.
Shouldn't be worried about it.
Wow, you're the first person I've ever heard say that.
Yeah, no, it's super healthy. There's more than 500 studies on human studies on creatine. Going down the line for me would be fish oil. There's just compelling data there with omega-3s, protecting inflammation, brain health, mood, all kinds of things. Mitochondrial supplements.
What would they be?
PQQ, almost named a vitamin, a really important nutrient that's involved in the Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle that creates energy, ATP in the body. That happens in the mitochondria. CoQ10 is in that path. People have heard about that with heart health. One of the reasons you're thinking, well, is it for heart or mitochondria? The heart has about 500 up to 5,000 mitochondria in each heart cell. So we always thought like there's one mitochondria in each cell,
Right.
but the cells that need more energy have more mitochondria. And there's a huge problem with a shortfall in energy that we all have, and it's from mitochondrial dysfunction. And that leads to nearly every disease. It leads to aging, autoimmune stuff. So
it's foundational.
It's foundational.
And do you prefer the CoQ10 as ubiquinol, or do you think it's better to take CoQ10?
So the ubiquinol form is good as you age, like let's say maybe past 50, or if you already have had a heart attack. Prior to that, like if you're younger than 40, no, it really doesn't matter. But certainly as you age, it becomes more important.
Wow. So talking about the mitochondrial health as being really a fundamental thing to your general health and wellness. So you said CoQ10, maybe in the form of ubiquinol, PQQ, what else?
Yeah, going down the line, there's some other ingredients that have been brought to market, like nicotinamide riboside, also called Niagen, but that's had kind of equivocal data. NAD holds a lot of promise. It's just the problem so far has been getting it to the place it needs to be, getting it to the mitochondria where it's effective. And that has been a struggle. The best form so far has been IV, but there's been some unique delivery systems like patches, like intranasal, that hold promise. And there's some other ingredients coming out that I think have a lot of promise as well. There's one called NMN, and there's some others that are being developed right now by me. So.
Fun. So I'm surprised. I didn't realize that Niagen, that it was equivocal. That I thought that that it was almost like, hey, this is like one of the greatest things for mitochondrial support now. But that's not conclusive, huh?
No, the data really hasn't been that good.
Because the stuff's not cheap. It's pretty expensive.
No, they've had studies where there's been no benefit, no effect. It's not cheap. There's really good marketing on it. I don't want to create too much controversy here, but if you look at the data, it's not very compelling as of right now. And from what I've seen, the tests I've done in-house, that NMN is actually a better ingredient, but I think there's even better ingredients that I've been working on in that area. So just to be clear, I am not disparaging NR, Niagen, because I'm working on something else. I'm just saying where the data is at. It's just not that compelling at this time, and I would rather do, some of these other methods to just deliver NAD directly.
And when you look at these varying mitochondrial supports, are they complementary to each other? Like was PQQ and ubiquinol, like they're complementary because they use different mechanisms to support mitochondrial health?
Yeah, it's part of that electron transport chain. Again, going back to what's happening in the mitochondria to generate energy. Again, the cellular powerhouse, remember like high school biology, creating that ATP. We're finding out, again, that it's so important, this ATP, it's like what runs your entire body, the energy we need to move, to have cellular functions, to age properly, to feel good, to have this conversation, to move my hands, right? All that is energy driven by ATP. So we're seeing there's a new condition that's called insufficient cellular energy, ICE. And that's correlated to, again, all diseases, aging, autoimmunity. I mean, think about like with autoimmunity, you have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, right? Those are like hypertonicity of muscles, like where muscles feel flexed. Like when someone's, you go to get a massage and they're like, what's up with this guy? It's like a rock, That's created from insufficient cellular energy. So we're talking about, when we talk about mitochondrial health, we're talking about everything. One of the reasons keto works, and like if I'm to use exogenous ketones or MCTs and elevate ketones, one of the reasons it works so well is providing an energy substrate because we have insufficient cellular energy because of insulin insensitivity, glucose intolerance. And so we're not getting enough energy to the brain. And in the brain, in neurological diseases, they call it brain energy gap, where you have Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. And when you provide ketones in supplemental form or ketogenic diet or fasting or MCTs, all of a sudden the lights come on. All of a sudden they go from stage 4 Alzheimer's to stage 1. Does it cure it? No, not necessarily, but it certainly helps. And addressing these mitochondrial function supplements, adding to that would certainly be helpful. So having like PQQ, CoQ10, NAD in some form, and having ketones and all these things, they're helping. Like people talk about ketones and the ketogenic diet. Oh, what is some miracle? All the things it does. How is that possible? Like there's way too many things it supposedly fixes. That's why. It's not just some random miracle, oh, this supplement does so many things. It's because it's addressing mitochondrial dysfunction.
So we have then fish oil as a basic support, the mitochondrial support that you think is kind of a staple that almost everybody should have. What else?
Vitamin D3.
D3.
And I would pair that with K2. I think the calcium we were told to take for years, we're taking in too high doses, getting in too many things. And you can actually run into calcification of your arteries. So it's important to have the appropriate nutrients for utilization. And we tend to be very low on D3, not getting enough sunlight, using sunblock, wearing too many clothes, long winters, all these, staying under fluorescent lights indoors. We need to get that D3. And then the K2 is definitely a great support nutrient for that. Those are probably my elite top ones right there. I mean, I really like the adaptogens. Those are unique because it's this group of herbs that give you balance. Like if you're too high blood glucose or too low, if you're too high blood pressure or too low, if you feel overstimulated or understimulated. What's great about the adaptogens, like think rhodiola, ashwagandha, ginseng, this class of compounds, they normalize you. And we're supposed to be more normalized in our lives. We have, there's two parts to our nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest, right? I like to call it hustle and flow. That's my own terminology for it. But there's times when we need to hustle, but there's times you want to be more in that flow state. And we're getting to the point, maybe it's social media, running around, our crazy schedules, being over inundated with things, chaos. We're addicted to sympathetic.
Right.
Driving fast, radio full blast, like everything. Caffeine.
Yeah.
Energy drinks, exactly. How often, and we're just trying to get blood from a stone, right? And just keep going and going and going. And we're not taking time to have solitude, to do gratitude, to do prayer, to do meditation, to do walks, to do these things where it was very common years ago to be by yourself. It was common to sit for a couple hours and read. It was common to have prayer or meditation. And now those things are becoming increasingly uncommon. We feel uncomfortable if 2 minutes goes by and we got to pick up our phone. Like we can't sit at a table by ourselves. We can't wait for someone without the phone. Or at an airport, you've seen like this sea of people just staring at their phone. And it's like, wow, these people could just be talking to each other, meeting each other, but instead everyone's looking at their phone. So.
And what form for the adaptogens? Is it also maybe capsules and or because when you're looking at herbs, what's the best way to take them?
Yeah, I think typically with adaptogens, I think it's fine to take them in a capsule, to take them in a powder, what have you, like what you'd call like a ready-to-mix powder. That's fine. They might not taste great, but if you have a good formulator, you can flavor them well. There's certain things that do matter, like with bioavailability. There's certain ingredients out there that have poor bioavailability. It's got good promise. Maybe if you injected it, it would work. But when it's taken orally, either because of digestion, the liver, you're not getting it. It's not working at full strength. It's not working the way it could, the way it should potentially. So that's where doing things like microencapsulation, enzyme inhibitors, or things that work with the liver to impact this cytochrome P450 enzyme that actually detoxifies. It's good that it works on certain ingredients to detoxify them, but sometimes it can work too hard on nutrients we're trying to take in. So that's where, again, having an intelligent formulator, having someone that knows the science, can put an ingredient in that has potential, but make sure that the right pieces are put in place so that it actually works. And that's what you want, is like when you're buying these things. I would rather buy less supplements and buy the right ones so they actually work. You don't want 10 products that don't work. I would rather you take 2 products that are more expensive, that work really well, and you get benefit from, that are experiential. Those are the ones you should be buying.
So is there a disposition toward capsule versus tablet versus liquid? Because I see supplements come in all these different forms. And is it just depend on the supplement, or is there a general rule that people should follow?
It really doesn't matter that much. I know that gets like, that you're just tablets, you're going to just poop them out and all this stuff, right? And it just goes straight to the toilet. And it's not true. Again, if it's the right tablet and the right excipients, then no, it doesn't matter. As long as you're taking these ingredients in and you're aware of bioavailability, you're aware of the synergy potentially of these ingredients and how they work together, it doesn't matter. I support all the formats.
What do you think of multivitamins? Good idea or not a good idea?
Good idea.
Okay.
I've formulated several, and I do think that people can have deficiencies in these ingredients. Like, it's very common to have a B12 deficiency. It's very common to have actually a folate deficiency. Even though your serum folate may test normal, within normal limits, you may have a deficiency or an issue with a gene, the MTHFR gene, where to take folate to its active 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, it's got to go through 4 enzymatic steps. And you may have a deficiency in those enzymes just because of this gene. So whenever I formulate something like a multivitamin or put in B vitamins, I always use what's called coenzymated forms of B vitamins, the active forms, so your body doesn't have to convert them.
Great.
The cheaper form of B12 is cyanocobalamin. The more expensive form, the active form, is methylcobalamin. Same with B6. The cheap form is pyridoxine. The expensive form is P5P. That's the active form. And with folate, again, it's 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, sometimes called methylfolate, versus just folic acid. So that's where, it matters what you're getting. And then with minerals, sometimes those, you just see like the elemental dose of this mineral and think, oh, well, I'm getting 50% of my magnesium, so this one's the same as that one. No, because there's different absorption rates. And you can get inorganic minerals, like say calcium carbonate, that has dramatically less absorption than a calcium citrate that's an organic form, calcium malate, or there's some really good forms, but it matters what form you're using. And so that's where, again, I formulate so that I can take my products, that my mom can take my products. I don't want something that doesn't have the active forms of the Bs, that has inorganic minerals, that is the underdosed form, that's not the study-backed form. I mean, not only if you're going to claim a study on a nutrient, you need to go back to the study and see how they dosed it. Were they dosing it once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day? And if it's 3 times a day in the study, you need to have that product, no matter what number of ingredients are in it, it has to be dosed 3 times a day. Not just, and you can't just give 3 times the dose. So you say, well, this is a total daily dose. That's not how it works. That might not replicate that study. So if you're going to refer back to a study, you need to do it how they did it in the study.
So if we do, let's call it science-based formulation, and you've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah.
There's always new data coming out, right?
Yes.
So over the years that you've been doing this, has it really modified your approach and what you formulate based on how data is changing?
100%.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm not changing with the data, then I'm not very scientific.
It doesn't mean the old stuff's wrong, right?
No.
There's just better understanding now?
Exactly.
Or could it be something like saying, well, this study, it dosed 3 times a day, so we have to follow that as protocols compared to putting 3 times. But maybe sometimes a subsequent study comes out and they say, oh, you can put 3 times the dose in once and you still get the effect. It's just a matter of what's known and what's unknown, I guess.
Right, and you also want to look at, like the FDA will ask you, you can't cherry pick data. You can't take one study where it worked And, just like there's questionable supplements, there's questionable studies.
Yeah.
You have to look at the study design, who are the authors behind it, what journals it published in. Because there's certainly people that, what's called pay for play, right?
Yeah.
Like where they get the study results they want. And sometimes people manipulate results. I hate to say that, but it's true.
More often than sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah.
It's sad. That is sad. So again, the consumer is lost. Well, the study said this, but with the FDA, they want to look at the totality of the data. So that's what I would look at too. What do all the studies say? Yeah, there might be one study you could cherry pick that has incredible results on this ingredient, but if all the studies say it's fairly equivocal or not beneficial, then that's not the greatest ingredient.
Right.
But you could easily leverage that one study for your marketing, and that's certainly what a lot of companies do.
So there's a lot of, I see something that's popular now is, kind of brain supplementation, looking at, neurotransmitters, et cetera.
Right.
And what do you think are the well-established things right now that people might want to consider if they want, better brain health?
Yeah, and the problem in this area is that I would say a number of these ingredients fall into that semi-drug or drug category. There's a class called racetams, like pyracetam, oxyracetam, aniracetam, a number of these compounds that have some research on them, and they do have some efficacy. If you go on like smart drug boards, nootropic boards, you will see a lot of people stacking these things, and they certainly can work. But they're not studied for safety. They're not legal herbal ingredients. They're they may say gray market, but technically they're illegal. They are interesting compounds. But I would recommend ingredients that do have legality, safety, really good science, a number of studies behind them. So I would go back to the fish oil. I would look at things like phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine, that's lecithin. I would get a really good choline source, again, to boost choline, acetylcholine, one that can pass the blood-brain barrier, and that would be either CDP choline or alpha-GPC. I do like ginkgo biloba. Actually, going back to that one, it's been shown to help with perfusion of the brain with blood. So another ingredient in that area has been pacitine. Those help get more blood flow going to the brain, which is important. Ketones, I really like ketones. Again, I've been doing ketogenic dieting for 20 years, so that's a whole other topic, but I definitely believe in the power of ketones. You don't have to be a ketogenic dieter. You could use exogenous ketones, supplemental ketones, and things like MCTs. I particularly like the C8 MCTs. That one's more effective than standard MCTs, which is more effective than coconut oil. If you're going to use something like huperzine A, I would only use it, that's that acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. I would only use it on an occasion like, once a month, like maybe when you have that big test, when you're, doing a documentary,
Right.
when you're going up to speak or, whatever, like important moments, maybe you're hungover.
Because you're going to crash after?
No, because it just, you could build up too high levels of acetylcholine. And that can be, neurotransmitters, there's certainly issues, neurological diseases, ADHD, like different conditions, like with serotonin, you can run into what's called 6-serotonin syndrome, where you have too much serotonin. We think about all these things like the low end, but there's a high end too. You don't want to be overstimulated.
Right.
You can have like arrhythmias, you can feel dizzy, you can feel confused. There's certainly issues when we go too high in these neurotransmitters.
There's a lot of source supplements or nutrients that can be fermented. Is that preferable as a general theme, or is it just on certain ones?
It is. A lot of amino acids are created synthetically and sometimes have harsh chemicals that's used to create them, and some of those chemicals can still be, the residue can still be present. So even though it may be 99.2% pure leucine or whatever amino acid, it could still have different compounds present that may be carcinogens. You just don't know. So when they do what's called bacterial fermentation, which is very common in Japan to create amino acids in certain vitamins. It's a more natural process. It's a vegan-friendly process. I don't know if people know this, but like with BCAAs, for example, branched chain amino acids, people might use to protect their muscles. They're anti-catabolic, which means spares lean body mass. Very popular in sports nutrition. Those can come from duck feathers or human hair.
Ooh.
In China, they actually collect human hair, and it gets processed and turned into BCAAs. So going through this process of fermentation and getting a natural, clean source is probably the preferred method, I feel, for amino acids, if it's not the amino acids that are just naturally present in a protein like whey or beef or whatever.
Speaking of amino acids, is there any that you supplement with or that you think, as a general rule, people need?
Yes, if you're not going to go the illegal route of anabolics and you are an aging male and you do work out, then I would recommend certainly supplementing protein-based meals with leucine. You can also use HMB, which is a leucine metabolite, and has fairly good data on being at least anti-catabolic and possibly anabolic. I think they'd have some synergy together.
Can you explain anabolic and catabolic?
Sure. Anabolic means we tend to think of it as building muscle, and it is, like in this case, but anabolic just means anything in the body that's building things up. And catabolic is anything that's breaking things down. And bodybuilders seem to think like you could just be anabolic 24/7, but that's actually cancer. Like you don't want to be in like a nonstop growth mode. It's very common. It's important that we constantly have cellular turnover, that things are breaking down, rebuilding. And that's the beauty of our bodies, that we're like a dynamic machine because these things are in constant turnover. There's different rates for different tissues, bone, gut, skin, but everything's constantly turning over in the body. So it's important that we have this anabolic, catabolic phases.
Supplements, especially like multivitamins, they're available in like the big box drugstores, the Walgreens of the world, etc. Usually pretty cheap. Are they? And I know that it's kind of like you're in an unenviable position that you don't want to be putting specific names of supplements down, maybe, but or if you do want to name them, by all means, please do. But those cheaper kind of supplements that are very mass market, do you find that they have much value or they don't have much value?
Is it better than nothing? Yes. If you are immunocompromised and in a hospital and nutrient deficient across the board, can it potentially save your life? Yes. Like I think there's some value to them. And the ones from those big pharmaceutical companies like Accentrum or whatever, do they test out? Yes. Are they dosed appropriately? Is there a difference between deficiency and optimal? Big time. Big time.
Explain that.
Huge. Like that's where like that orthomolecular dosing, can have a big impact. Like 60 milligrams of vitamin C gets you away from scurvy, but that's not optimal dosing. Like we want to know like what makes us elite in our performance, in our health. So that's a very different equation, and that's where you got Dr. Linus Pauling, working on gram levels of vitamin C, a very different number than 60 milligrams. All these things that we're told to take, it's to prevent the deficiency, and that's cool, and that's where nutrition really became important. Us having pellagra and all these disease, like we don't even know these diseases anymore. Right. They're just so uncommon. But it's rickets, things like that. But now we're in a very different place where we don't have these deficiencies because we're certainly in a surplus with our food, right. And we get enough nutrients to prevent deficiency. It's what puts us in an optimal state for most of us. Like for you and me, like what are we looking for? And that's where you can't get a one a day. No way. Like you would need 4 to 6 capsules, at least in my mind, to really be effective.
What do you think the future is? Where's this nutrition industry going?
The nutrition industry is going to go based on your genetics, based on your blood work, maybe based on day-to-day data, like as we get wearing more wearables and we're getting the biohacking quantified self, like maybe like our formulations, let's say we get, 20 tubes of ingredients, and we have a machine that makes the product for us in our house, and it's based on our needs for that day. What was your stress level? What was your food intake? What was your sleep level like? And now it's like making your product not only for you, the industry's starting to get there, but based on you now.
Yeah.
And that's where I see the changes happening.
Do you think there's a difference between what you see in the blood and what's in the cell? In other words, is the blood a perfect reflection? Because you say, the humoral amounts of vitamin D3 are X, Y, or Z, but does that mean that's what's really in my cells?
That's a great question, and no, you're right. You're absolutely right. There can be issues with cellular transport getting across the membrane. That's a whole different problem. It's kind of like you can take something in your gut and maybe it gets broken down there and it's gone. Probiotics, for example. You have to protect those. And then again in the brush border enzyme in the intestine. And then again in the plasma. And then again to the cell. And maybe then again to the mitochondria in the cell. So there's all these steps where, and that doesn't even take into account stability in the capsule before you even take it.
Right.
Because maybe those nutrients can be interacting with each other. Like for example, like a lot of the B vitamins have very poor stability. You have to put in massive overages, sometimes 1,000% overage. A lot of companies don't know to do that. And sometimes these B vitamins interact with each other. So you have to take that into account and do 10 trials of blending these ingredients, sending them out for testing, and then you can make your product and manufacture it. You might have to do, like when I formulated a multi, it took me 2 years of work before I could even finish the formula to see how these ingredients interacted. So there's a lot going on, and you take into account maybe the water you're taking it with, the food you're taking it with, the air it's exposed to, the light it's exposed to. I mean, those are all factors. The heat.
So I could take a bunch of vitamin D3 and K2, and I could see, your blood levels went from deficient to now you got normal levels, but that doesn't necessarily mean my cells are using it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's where you have to hopefully work, maybe with one, a quality formulator, or two, functional medicine where you're looking at the right blood markers. Again, like going back to, something like folate. A doctor might look, or creatinine that you were talking about. They see the creatinine, oh, that's dangerous. They see the folate, oh, he's good. They don't know, to look for the things that they should be looking for.
Right.
And that brings up some very good markers that I think every doctor should be looking at that probably would cost less than $100. And we could reduce the amount of disease, I'm going to say 80%.
Wow. So what are some of those markers? 2
of these markers.
Go ahead.
That's it. There's a lot of markers I could potentially look at. But if we looked at these 2, just because I say it's cheap and it's easy, if we all looked at these. Mitochondrial dysfunction, you see the result of mitochondrial dysfunction is 2 really important things. There's some other things that you could look at, but chronic inflammation and chronic glycation. Blood sugar being elevated too much, insulin being elevated too much, and you being in an inflammatory state too much. Is it okay to have elevations in glucose? Yes. Is it okay to have elevations in inflammation? Yes. But we're in a chronic state of those, and that's causing all kinds of damage and dysfunction. And that's a result of mitochondrial dysfunction. So if we were looking at, and I could tell you, if these are elevated, I could say that you're heading towards heart disease, you're heading towards diabetes, you're heading towards Alzheimer's, you're heading towards cancer, you're heading towards more rapid aging. And that's, so looking at HSCRP, C-reactive protein, that's a marker for inflammation. Looking at hemoglobin A1C as a marker for glycation, blood sugar damage. You don't want to, glucose is too transient, depending on meals, exercise, stress, it just goes up and down too much.
Like it should.
Like it should,
right.
Exactly. It's important that it does that.
Right.
So you want to look at a more stable, long-term indicator of blood glucose, and that's the hemoglobin A1C. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So that's really like, I guess, talk about bang for the buck. You know, hey, if you're not just get a couple of markers, those two are going to give you a lot of data that's important to know.
Huge. Yeah.
Wow. So I feel like I could talk to you about so many things. we could have a long conversation, but you mentioned the microbiome just a few moments ago. So I hear a lot of controversy around taking probiotics. You know, some people saying, you know, you're taking them in capsule form. There's no way you can get the array of them that you need, and that it really gets through, you know, your stomach and into, you know, your intestines to repopulate, you know, the flora, et cetera. So what's your view on supplementation for gut health?
It's a mess. Like it's very confusing. You have trillions of cells in your gut microbiome, and everyone's makeup is very unique. You know, if I'm a ketogenic dieter, it's going to be very different than yours. If I have artificial sweeteners, it's very different. We don't even know like what's good and what's bad. We just know they're different.
Right.
And then a lot of these products, you know, you have a variety of strains. We don't know which strains do what. There's a variety of doses from maybe like 1 million to billion, right? And you have some that are spore form and microencapsulated, where it's protected from, you know, gastric acid. And then you have some that aren't, where you're just maybe getting dead cells delivered. You know, probiotic means they're supposed to be living cells,
Right.
And maybe they're, you know, delivered dead. And it's all very confusing. And then is it delivered with a prebiotic that might have an impact on feeding those cells? So it's really hard to say right now. There's a lot of research going on right now. There's been some data to show that certain probiotics delivered with an antibiotic can help the outcome. There's some data with some GI diseases, like diarrhea, you know, which is actually a #1 killer in the world.
Really?
The #1 killer is diarrhea, dehydration.
Wow.
So yeah, like if you look at the water quality in, you know, the rest of the world, it's a huge factor. So looking at those things, it's very difficult to say right now. There's a lot of promise. There's the gut-brain axis that you probably heard about.
Sure.
That really our gut might be dictating a lot of our behaviors. Like we think so much of it's in the brain, but all those neurotransmitters that we were talking about, you know, dopamine, GABA, serotonin, all those things, those are in the gut too. And it's kind of our ancient brain, if you will, and we're not sure which one's driving what.
Right.
There's some interplay, but there's just so much that needs to be done. And if you look at one fascinating area is like FMTs, fecal microbiota transplants. So where you're literally taking someone else's poop and putting it inside of you. But they've done research to show that, like with C. difficile, which can kill someone in a, you know, nursing home, hospital, whatever, in a matter of, you know, 12 hours. They could be dead. You know, like it's very, very powerful at putting you in a state of being immunocompromised, really bad bacteria, really bad diarrhea, and again, dehydration, and other things like VRE. These conditions kill people so easily and yet are so easily cured. But typically, it's been addressed in the hospital scenario with antibiotics. And a lot of times, these residents or people in the hospital are resistant to most antibiotics. You do what's called a culture and susceptibility test, and you see that they're resistant to like every antibiotic because every time they have a urinary tract infection, every time they have anything, a fever, they give them antibiotics. And now they're in a state where they're resistant, and they have very low probiotics, very dysbiotic in their gut. And you're getting even more immunocompromised from taking the antibiotics. Now they're running more of a fever, and it's kind of like, will they make it? Will they? Maybe they won't. Like it's, you know, it's very tenuous to use antibiotics in that scenario. So giving them this fecal microbiota transplant, where within hours, I'm talking like literally 2 hours, these things are cured.
So it's interesting that you're literally, for all intents and purposes, transplanting someone else's microbiome, you know, in the form of their feces in, and that it that quickly can jumpstart the body, its immune defenses, and get it going.
radical change. And you want to talk about, I know it sounds gross to people listening to this right now, but I believe that, one, there's going to be a lot of data looking into isolating certain strains out of like what's there in the feces of someone that can maybe most radically impact someone else. And we'll look at that and we'll try and isolate those strains, figure out what those are, and put those in a product. But I think there'll be maybe fecal vacationing, where maybe we go to Africa, where someone's never been exposed to EMFs, GMOs, antibiotics, steroids, on down the line, great air quality, great food that they eat, they exercise. And we're going to go to these remote places and get their feces, and that'll be like the point of the trip.
Wow.
And, maybe we have a radical impact on our health. I mean, so much is dictated through our gut.
One man's feces is another man's
treasure.
nutrition, right? Treasure, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a concept. That's very interesting. That's purely back to nature, I guess, in that respect, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. This has been so fascinating that we spoke for normally twice as long as I normally do these interviews. But as I said, I feel like I could talk to you about anything. So I think your reputation is well deserved.
Thank you.
And really generous of you to come and sit here and share all this wisdom with us. So thank you very much for that.
I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. And my main goal in life is to educate people. I believe in supplements. I deeply believe in them. And it hurts me to hear when people say supplements don't work.
Right.
It's because they've been using the wrong products. Yeah. And that's where hopefully you and I educating people can make a difference in that.
I trust you enjoyed that time with Shawn Wells. What terrific information he brings. A man who's really committed to getting this message to the world, and I was really happy that we could share him with you. Arguably, the biggest craze out there right now is CBD. I am seeing it in coffee shops. I'm seeing it in the regular grocery stores. I'm seeing it everywhere. And I can tell you that all CBD is not equal. All CBD is not effective, but the right CBD can be life-changing. My interview with Tim Skiwat, who has many different credentials you'll learn about, focuses in on this area, and I believe will answer a lot of questions about this explosive trend called CBD. Tim, really excited to have this conversation with you.
Likewise, Patrick. Honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So let's talk about your background briefly. How did you get involved in the type of work you're doing?
I got interested in supplements back when I was in high school and college, and I just realized the power that they had. Was an avid athlete, exerciser, and just really saw the potential that nutrition had, and then how supplements kind of the icing on the cake in many instances to really help accelerate fitness, not just for me, but for the clients that I worked with, which I've been working client-facing for 20 years now. General population and athletes, all different levels, all different ages. And so supplements play an integral role in each person's health goals and concerns. And the level of that role differs depending on where a person is. High-level athletes who have everything dialed in, supplements maybe a little bit more. Someone who's got a very, very poor lifestyle and has a lot of room to improve in lifestyle factors, maybe supplements don't carry as much weight, but they can often be the low-hanging fruit to get you moving down the right path. So it's individual, but I think that there's some application of supplements for pretty much everyone. BioTrust Nutrition is the name of the company that I've been working with since we started in 2012.
The BioTrust story is kind of an interesting one because they were very successful very quickly. Why do you think that is? What do you think it was that made the consumer marketplace respond so well to them?
Josh Bozzoni and Joel Marion put a lot of work and time and effort into building a company that disrupted the industry in many ways. There's a few things that really stand out. First of all, Josh and Joel had, because they are so great at what they do, and they're so giving, and they're just so awesome in general. And I'm not just saying that because I hope they're watching, and But the biggest thing to me with BioTrust is dedication to quality, and that's where you can kind of speak to those skeptics and say, you're right. There are a lot of companies out there that are not doing things the right way, and there's, a laundry list of things that they're doing poorly. But we know that. We know what's wrong, and we also know the right way to do things. And
Let's talk about some of those things. So if I'm the consumer and I'm going to the marketplace, what am I avoiding?
this is tricky. When it comes to formulating a supplement, there's a lot of background work that goes into it. It takes hours and hours of research to find exceptional ingredients that have been tested in humans and shown to provide XYZ benefit. And then going out and finding those ingredients, and not just because whatever ingredient you're looking for, there's a chance that you can find it for a few dollars, and there's a chance you can find it for a lot more. And there's a reason for that. There's things where is it coming from? What's the purity? What's the potency? Is it standardized for the correct active ingredients? Things like that. So it starts with ingredients, but then what BioTrust does is not only identifies the most effective ingredients and finds them in the purest, safest, most potent forms, but also tests everything. You have to test everything. You don't know exactly what that raw material might be exposed to, what type of contaminants. There's concerns about heavy metals. There's concerns about microbiological things. There's concerns about allergens. And so you have to test for all those things in the raw materials. And then as you're manufacturing things, you want to test to make sure that there's consistency across the board. You also you have to test the finished product to see what's on the label is in the bottle, and then once again test for any of those things that you don't want. Even solvents, residual solvents that might have been involved in the extraction process. You don't want paint thinner, for example, in your supplement. You don't want pesticides. You don't want heavy metals. You don't want those types of things that here you are thinking you're putting something truly beneficial into your body, yet it's a vehicle for these other potentially toxicants.
Now, the things that you mentioned, are they actually found in supplements? Things like paint thinner?
Well, that's something that we're starting to see in CBD products.
Well,
because you have to isolate this ingredient from the plant, and one way that you do it is with ethanol, and you can do that in your basement, I suppose, if you know enough about chemistry with paint thinner, and that's absolutely a problem that's coming up.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have to test for those residual solvents. There's curcumin is another example, very popular supplement, and there's a residual solvent called EDC, which is found in many curcumin supplements that has potential toxic side effects. And then another, just building on the testing aspect of it, not only do you have to test the product when it's finished and bottled, but then you really want to do stability testing. Does this product really maintain its stability, its potency, its purity over the course of its shelf life, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, or so on. So testing is a big thing. So those are some quality measures that that BioTrust is doing differently. I think also something that gets downplayed, maybe that people don't think about too much, is the marketing aspect of it. I think that's ethical marketing, honest, truthful marketing is really important. Certainly you want to explain to someone how this could be beneficial to them, but there's some outlandish, outrageous claims out there across the board with the supplement industry, and I constantly see it. It's frustrating to me, and you get customers saying, why is this better than that? And you start to look at these things and these people are way over-promising. And eventually they may get their hands slapped by the FTC or something like that. So I think marketing is a big one that gets overlooked. And then to me, a supplement company is not just somebody that sells you a finished good. It's also providing you exceptional service. And that's something that BioTrust does better than anyone that I know of, is not just customer service, but coaching, community, things like that. So those are just kind of a general overview.
So some things that are sort of interesting is that there's so many formulations of so many different products. There seem to be some that you cited a couple of them, like curcumin, that are very popular all of a sudden, and they do this and they do this, and then people make claims about benefits. So here's a two-part question. The first one is, roughly how many different formulations does BioTrust have, just as an example? We
currently have 17 products that we have in stock.
Yeah, and most people don't take all 17, I'm assuming, right?
right.
So and then I know some companies even have dozens, maybe even over 100.
Yeah.
So how does a consumer decide which one's right for them? Because they all seem like they have benefit, and it's like all the benefits seem to be desirable.
Right.
So how would a consumer go to your 17 products and say these are probably the right ones in that product line for me?
You just Google it. I mean, just use WebMD. No, I'm just kidding. Be the Google doctor. Just kidding, because that's what most people are doing, and they see, this product has these benefits, and that may be the functions in the body, but that doesn't mean that you're like necessarily deficient in them or something like that. I think it may be also important to distinguish between what are supplements for, or what are supplements really. When you boil it down, there's two categories of supplements. You have supplements that provide essential nutrients, which are those things that we need to get. Our body needs them for a variety of purposes. We cannot produce them on our own, so we need to get them through our diet or supplements.
Right.
Very clear examples of those would be vitamins, minerals, essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. So those are just kind of like your foundational types of supplements. And then you have non-essential supplements that provide non-essential nutrients. These would be basically everything else. The herbal supplements, certainly. That's not to say they can't have tremendous benefit. It's just that your body can function just fine without them. Right. Optimally is a different question.
Right.
So how do you go about finding out what you need? To me, these days, you don't just have to work with a medical doctor. You have, in fact, it may be better to work with another type of healthcare practitioner who's more open-minded, more well-versed in the world of supplements and naturopathy and things like that. So naturopathic doctors, functional medicine clinicians, chiropractors, nutrition coaches like myself. I mean, you and I have talked about this, that some people that are self-interested in this have greater education on all the topics than, say, a medical doctor. Now, that's not to say that medical doctors aren't well-versed. They certainly can be. It's just that you have a wide variety of people that can help you. So that would be one way to do it. In the case of BioTrust, you can also come to us and say, hey, here's what I'm looking, these are my goals. What do you think would fit me best? And people want black and white answers. They want to know X, Y, and Z. But the answer is that it depends. Like really, most questions related to health and fitness, we can provide some generalizations, but the answer is it depends on a lot of factors. Where you're at in your journey, what's important to you. And just to peel off and talk about scientific research for just a second, you have to realize that the results of the study are just the sum of an average, just averages. They're not saying that this is what everyone is going to experience. This is what is experienced on average, and the standard deviation might be large. What's nice now is that researchers are starting to publish more individual data points, so you can see like, wow, this person had a 10% increase and this person had a 20% decrease, and the average turned out to be this, but we can see that there's wide varieties. And this is something that's really exciting about supplements too, is that as we delve more into epigenetics, nutrigenomics, even gut biome type of stuff, we're going to be able to personalize supplements on an even greater scale than just saying, hey, this is what Coach Tim said or something like that. This is what my DNA is telling me. This is what my gut is telling me that I need. This is the exact probiotic.
Do you think that's where it's going?
I do.
Yeah, so it's going to be much more customizable as far as what supplements you're getting as compared to saying, everybody takes one of these 17 or 20 or what have you.
Yeah, I do. And I think that we have to express some caution with that too, because I'm already starting to see it. Like there's some genetic testing interpretation apps out there that will tell you this is what your DNA says, these are the supplements that you need to take. Oh, by the way, we sell them, here they are. Yeah. There's a little, and I think that we can't rule out personal experiences. So that's where the clinician comes into play, and that's where I think that the combination of the data, the genetic data, the gut biome data, and the clinician would be like the consummate pairing for someone to really dial into what's best for them.
So with different people that you've worked with over time, I mean, some are saying like, if you're looking at sports performance, that's one consideration. Some people are dealing with chronic disease, or
right.
They've got problems that they're trying to solve, and they're looking for a more holistic way to do that. What is the way for them to try to identify the right professional to support them? Because as you're saying, don't just Google it and say I know. Yeah. But find someone. Do you have a resource, or is it through word of mouth? What do you recommend?
That is a bit tricky, but I do think with the rise in functional medicine that we're starting to see people, medical health professionals, starting to advocate themselves more as that solution. You can go to the Institute of Functional Medicine and search for a practitioner there, and they definitely take that type of holistic approach. I would also, encourage searching for naturopathic doctors within your area. You have to be careful because they're not just because they have they're not all the same. Just because they have those initials after their name doesn't mean they practice the same. And I do think looking at reviews and things like that can be helpful. Obviously, people that have had less desirable experiences tend to be more outspoken. But those would be two areas that I would tend to gravitate towards when I'm dealing with a disease, because I do think you need some advanced help. And I do think that you need, in those cases, I do think you need to have some boots on the ground type of someone there to help you and navigate measurements and things like that as well.
Since you're kind of looking at the whole marketplace that's out there, do you have a estimate? I mean, as far as how many manufacturers that you think are in the marketplace are doing it right versus how many are really doing kind of a sloppy job or even a bad job?
I don't know the exact number, but if I had to hedge my bets, I would say that the number of companies that are doing it right are pale in comparison to the number of companies that are
definitely in the minority.
Definitely in the minority, absolutely. Like if it's a seesaw, you got a 3-year-old daughter. If it's a seesaw, that at the weight, the elephant is on the side of people who are not doing it very well.
Wow. So if I were to throw a dart to pick a supplement, then you're saying statistically it's probably not going to be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I go on Amazon, for instance, and I type something in, my jaw hits the floor at the claims that people are making and the types of products that are out there with reviews. I mean, because most of these are ad sponsored that are hitting the top of the list, and it's people that have, a lot of times within the supplement industry, what we're finding is that people that have the dollars to spend on advertising, that can get the influencers with the pretty faces of the beautiful bodies and things like that. That social proof, I mean, Robert Cialdini talked about it a long time ago, that social proof is very powerful. And then they just tend to have excellent marketing backgrounds and, selling you what you want and then giving you whatever they have in the bottle. And that's what's scary, is that what's out there is not only is it possibly ineffective, but it's potentially dangerous.
Well, speaking of Amazon, because, more and more people are buying all their stuff on Amazon.
Right.
Maybe sorry to say I might be one of them, but
likewise.
But not when it comes to supplements. No. But a lot of people are going to Amazon right now, and I think most of the supplement industry is kind of forced or compelled to want to put their products on Amazon. So if somebody's trying to navigate Amazon, I'm imagining BioTrust maybe is on Amazon, but do you look at ratings? If I'm the consumer now, I just look at ratings. I mean, even Amazon has like an Amazon choice thing, but I don't know that I would trust Amazon to make a choice.
Right.
So how would you navigate Amazon to try to find a good supplement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can look at reviews from other people. I think that's relevant. Wouldn't rule it out. And as you're looking through reviews, if there's questions or there's concerns out there, another thing you might look at is the company responding? Does the company care? Is it just not putting any effort into the customer service side of things? I think that's important. I don't think you can always expect 5-star everything. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone has the same experiences. Right. So I do think that's relevant. I think I would look at the claims to see what's being, if it's like claiming to cure diseases and solve all your problems, I'd be skeptical. If you find something that is of interest, I would probably take the next step and go to try to find their website. In addition to just looking at Amazon, I want to make sure that the products that I'm using are third-party tested to say that they have what's on the label is in the bottle.
And that would be on the website.
That's where I would go to find it on the website. They might say that on Amazon, but you can probably take an extra step to go to the website. I want to know that the product is manufactured in a FDA-registered facility, that it's produced in a GMP-compliant facility, that it goes through multiple stages of testing. Sometimes you can ask the company for a certificate of analysis to say, hey, I actually want to see proof that what you got is there, and I want to see the testing and all that kind of stuff. So that would probably be an extra step that I would take.
So companies that provide that stuff are probably doing the right stuff.
Yeah, transparency is a big thing right now. Transparent labeling, transparency in practices, and so the more transparent a company is, the more trustworthy they tend to be.
So let me ask you this then, because you know a lot about this world. You're obviously a consumer also. So what are you taking?
For me, some staples would be a protein supplement, a probiotic, digestive enzymes, and At the moment, I'm using some oregano oil just as like an antibacterial type of thing like that. My wife and I both use supplements, and I use BioTrust I trust what's in there. I know what's in there, so I use BioTrust for certain needs. Thorne Research is another company that really I turn to for everything. Everything that BioTrust does not have, I turn to Thorne, and in some cases I use Thorne over BioTrust. Jarrow is another one that we use. Now Foods is another reputable brand. Quicksilver Scientific has a really unique line of products that no one else really has, and they just do a magnificent job.
And now, since you mentioned your wife, what does she do? There's females maybe have somewhat different considerations than males. So what is she taking?
Yeah, so we just learned that we are expecting now. So she's
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Shocker, it's actually twins.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations squared.
Yes. So some staples for her in that stage of the game would be a prenatal, omega-3s, probiotic. Now we had mold in our house that we discovered over the last course of the year. And she was particularly sensitive to the mycotoxins that the mold produced. And so she's also on a bit of a detoxification process as well. So we have glutathione in the mix. She's using Restore, which is also going to help with the detoxification. And she's using PQQ, which is going to help with detoxification. We both use magnesium supplements. She's actually using several different homeopathic little tinctures. She's working with a naturopathic physician on that aspect of things to help with the detoxification. Mold is a huge and growing concern. And there's actually a doctor in Austin, her name's Dr. Ann Shippey, who I've turned to for education on that. And speaking of Quicksilver, they have some detoxification bundles that can help not only increase the body's ability to get rid of toxic things like mycotoxins, but also bind to them and excrete them. That's if you're just kind of recycling them in your body, it's not as effective as if you actually eliminate it.
And it's interesting because you're young, you're fit, you seem very healthy, but digestive enzymes. So what motivates you to do that?
What's interesting is that with healthy foods, so quote unquote healthy foods, that I've noticed more and more that people have issues with digestion, with gas and bloating specifically. And now you see a rise in something called a low FODMAP diet. So basically you have these fermentable carbohydrates in these otherwise healthy foods. Some that come to mind are like cruciferous vegetables, and you have things like onions and garlic, and a more common one is lactose that people know is also one of these fermentable carbohydrates. And so the body tends to, some of them are fibers basically, and so they pass on to the large intestine where they serve as fodder or food for the microbes, the bacteria that are in there. And even though that fermentation process that's going on there is a potentially healthy thing because it results in the production of these short-chain fatty acids, which can have anti-inflammatory effects, fuel the immune system. One of the byproducts of that fermentation is the buildup of gas. And so what I found with the digestive enzyme supplements that I use, the BioTrust Absorb Max for that, is that it actually helps with the breakdown of some of those fermentable substrates and lessens those types of gas bloating issues. Now, in my wife's case, I know that she has issues with bile acid production and fat digestion, so she takes a different digestive enzyme to help with that. She's also using a supplement called taurine, which is an amino acid that's essential for the bile acid production, things like that. So gas and bloating are very common, very digestive-centric symptoms that people might recognize as, reasons that they would need a digestive enzyme, but there's extra intestinal issues too, like you might have some brain fog, energy issues, skin-related issues that could all be joint discomfort, could all be signs of poor digestion. There was an interesting enzyme potential theory that Edward Howell came up with and said that we basically have a limited capacity to produce enzymes over our lifetime. And if we're not careful with that, we basically, just as we get older, we produce fewer digestive enzymes. And so that was another impetus for me, was like, well, I'm probably probably don't have the bulletproof digestion that I once did. And so just anything I can do to extract more nutrients from the food that I eat, I think is worthwhile.
You have been involved in development of CBD products.
Yeah, I've been really, really interested in CBD. I mean, you can't go anywhere without seeing the CBD dispensaries or seeing it online. It's very, very popular right now, and for good reason. I think that there's a lot of promising research out there. I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done. But I think what's out there right now, both, I would say the evidence, because both the scientific evidence and the real world evidence shows considerable promise. And one of the more promising ways that I see CBD helping is alleviating the constellation of symptoms associated with a variety of chronic diseases. So I think I'd put it out there that CBD is not going to cure or treat a whole lot of medical conditions per se, but the symptoms, the consequences of those conditions, CBD does seem to be quite helpful with.
Now, it seems like there's a gold rush to CBD. Everybody's jumping into this industry. Right. So maybe we could do a quick rundown on the good, the bad, and the ugly. So maybe we'll start with the good.
Yeah. Well, we have some pretty alarming but pretty insightful studies that tell us that there's a lot of people doing it wrong. And so there was a study just recently published within the last year or so in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, which is a prestigious medical journal, that tested 84 different CBD products, and 70% of those did not meet the label claim, meaning that,
wow,
yeah, 70%.
70% didn't meet their label claim.
And a pretty substantial portion, I think it was 30%, had higher than claimed THC content. Now, that's not to dismiss THC as having some value, but it also has psychoactive and addictive properties. And if you're buying a CBD product, you're going into it knowing, or with the assumption that this is either no THC or extremely low THC. So you're getting something that you're not expecting.
What should the upper limit of THC be?
Well, in any of these industrial hemp-derived CBD products, which if you're buying a legal CBD supplement, that's what it should be. The upper limit should be 0.3%. Now, moving forward, CBD products from companies that are doing things the right way, there's really a couple of ways that you can easily validate their purity, potency, and safety. And one is that most of the bottles moving forward should have a QR code that you can scan, which should directly link the consumer to a page on their website, which allows you to search through the lot numbers of the product and say, okay, my lot number is 123. I'm going to click on 123 on the website, and I'm going to see that it contains this much CBD. That's what it says on the label, or plus or minus a certain amount. It contains this much THC or none. It looks at the microbiological, it looks at pesticides, herbicides, all kinds of things like that. Because, for instance, the hemp plant itself is a bioaccumulator or a phytoremediator, which is great for the ground, great for the earth, because it's drawing up the heavy metals and these toxicants from the ground, but it's in the plant.
Wow.
You don't want to unknowingly put something in your body that's harmful. Here, all this time you think you're doing something good for yourself.
So now if you're growing the stuff in, for lack of a better term, toxic soil,
right?
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's very concerning. Another thing you can look for, in addition to the QR code, is the U.S. Hemp Authority has a third-party certification program, and that's an extra step that the manufacturer has to take to show that they are following the most stringent guidelines. So you can go to the website, the U.S. Hemp Authority, and see who's registered. It's not to say that everyone who's doing it right is registered, but that's a good way to narrow down the list.
When you hear about the different sources of CBD, so is there other plants that should be extracted from or can be other than hemp, or should it all be from hemp?
Hemp-derived CBD would be the only one. And I think it's important to make the distinguishment that it should come from companies or industrial hemp, meaning that the Farm Bill of 2018, which legalized industrial hemp-derived CBD products, you have to go. Companies that are producing this have to be certified through the Farm Bill. So they have to be doing it the right way. Now you have, again, part of this gold rush is you have people that are potentially growing hemp in their backyard. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but there are people that are not doing things the right way. But as far as where you're getting CBD from, the hemp plant would be the primary plant where you're going to get it from. It's up to 40. Hemp is up to 40% CBD, and it has a maximum by legal definition of 0.3% THC. Now, having said that, even though THC and CBD get all the love, there's a lot more to the hemp plant than just those two compounds. CBD and THC are known as phytocannabinoids. and we can get into that a little bit more, but the hemp plant has over 100 of these phytocannabinoids, and we're really just starting to learn about CBD, even though, interestingly, CBD was isolated before THC in 1940s, but it was kind of put on the back burner when they started to see that THC was having the psychoactive effects. But be that as it may, so you have over 100 different phytocannabinoids in the hemp plant, and we're just starting to kind of break the ice on what some of these other ones do. Some of the other ones that are kind of up and coming are CBC, CBN, CBG, and we'll probably learn more about those. But in addition to the phytocannabinoids, you have compounds called terpenes, which may also have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant types effects. For instance, beta-caryophyllene is one of the most prevalent terpenes in the hemp plant, and is also in these full spectrum CBD products, and it directly binds to a receptor in the body that has an analgesic or pain relief effect. So, from my standpoint, if I'm looking for a CBD product that is going to help with pain relief, I'm probably going to be looking at a full spectrum product to get all the benefits, the synergistic, the entourage benefits of a CBD product as opposed to an isolate.
So there's different applications. I think you said you could take it orally. I guess you could do a cream. Are there also different qualitatively what's in a product? Does that vary from product to product?
Yeah. So you have like soft gels that you can swallow, and you have tinctures, which would be in a little dropper that you'd put in your mouth, and then you have edibles like gummies or something like that, and then you have creams. And each one of those presents certain challenges. A big thing for a lot of people is just going to be compliance. Like, what is the method that you can do and do consistently? If swallowing a soft gel is easier for you to do, and you can do it on a regular basis to get the routine basis to get the benefits, then that's better for you than maybe a tincture, which you don't necessarily like the taste of it or something like that. There's probably different absorption and pharmacokinetic properties to the different delivery methods. For instance, I've seen that tinctures, which basically a tincture, you drop it underneath your tongue,
right,
and it gets absorbed through the mucosal lining there. And I've heard that the absorption rate is about 5 times higher than an oral soft gel. So a tincture may have some better absorption benefits.
What do you think some of the biggest misnomers are around CBD?
I think you have two camps there. I think that you have people that don't really know enough that think that just associate it with
marijuana,
weed. Yeah. So that's, I think, one of the biggest ones is that it's illegal, that it's bad for you, that it's basically going to cause you to feel those psychoactive properties that THC does. And then you have the other misnomer that it's a cure-all. So I think you have a fork in the road, and they're both extreme. With regard to
so just on that for a second, because a lot of people would start to equate CBD with medical marijuana,
right,
and as if they're two versions of a similar thing, but they're completely different in their application and why you would use it.
Yeah, you summed up perfectly. I think you can use this metaphor. So for hemp and marijuana, they're both from the cannabis family, but they are distinct plants. So it's like citrus. If I told you citrus, that's one family, but lemons and limes are very different.
Right.
So
and oranges
hemp is
and
exactly.
grapefruits.
They're like lemons and limes. They're very similar. They have some similar compounds, but they're unique. So hemp, again, by law, has to have 0.3 THC or lower, whereas your marijuana plant, which is specifically grown for its THC, can have up to 35% THC.
So you from 0.3 to 35%.
Yes.
So that's a pretty big spread.
Yeah. Certain people don't want to get into the psychoactive properties, and that's the nice thing about CBD is it's very safe. It's non-addictive. It doesn't have those psychoactive properties and things like that. So.
Yeah, that would be I think probably a big one that's out there. And would you say though that having that 0.3% THC is probably beneficial though? In other words, somehow that maybe is a catalyst for the use?
Yes, I do. In general, I think that having the full spectrum of the phytocannabinoids is ideal for overall purposes. I do think that there may be some applications where an isolate CBD may be the right choice. But yes, and in fact, I've used this term a couple times called entourage. So basically what the entourage effect is saying is that these compounds optimize each other. And we see that with one of the first applications of this term, the entourage effect, was that researchers found that, and this was like in the 90s, when they first discovered this endocannabinoid system, which is now being considered the body's master regulatory system, because it controls all the others, they found that there were other compounds that they thought were inactive that were actually potentiating the body's own cannabinoids. And so it's the same kind of thing with these phytocannabinoids, is that they seem to work synergistically. And CBD and THC is a perfect example. If you take THC by itself, the effects are pretty different than if you combine THC with CBD. And so now we go to places, states where THC is actually legal, you can find varying ratios of CBD to THC. Basically, what CBD and THC do is THC works on this CB1 receptor in the body, and it has these psychoactive effects, but also has many beneficial properties. But CBD kind of turns down the volume. It kind of blocks the receptor.
It's kind of a modulator.
Yeah, it modulates it, turns down the volume a little bit, so THC doesn't have quite a loud effect, but it also allows THC to last longer in the body. So you get a more muted response that lasts a longer period of time.
And this is the whole thing. I think the difference when you look at botanicals in general, or maybe even this particular situation as compared to a pharmaceutical, is that there seems to be an intelligence that's built into these plants.
Yes.
And then when you have the full spectrum, then you're getting kind of the complements of what was intelligently there as compared to trying to do isolates.
Yeah, I would agree with you that intelligence that's built into the plant, that anytime that we can nourish the endocannabinoid system with the full spectrum, is likely going to be better off and really enhance the effects of any individual component. If we look at the research, it's really tricky to identify an actual dosage of CBD that works, so to speak.
Right.
We see studies that are using 300 to 1,000 milligrams of CBD, and then you see a product that contains 15 milligrams of CBD, and it's like, do you even need to? I don't think so. But my point is that I think when you have a full spectrum, you may need less of the one in order to get the greater benefit. But just on the topic of dosage, what I've seen so far is that probably somewhere between 0.67 to 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight per day seems to be somewhere in the ideal range. And because CBD has such a high safety profile, I think it's okay to start at
So it would be kind of a body weight dependent thing, saying
I think so.
How much, and so give me that one more time just so it's clear.
Yeah, so it's somewhere between 0.67 milligrams to 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight per day. So kilogram, most of us take our weight in pounds. Divide your pounds by 2.2, and then you can multiply that number to get it. So an easy example would be someone who's 220 pounds. That's 100 kilos. And so that person probably would be somewhere between 67 and 100 milligrams of CBD per day.
And would you do that all at once, or would you spread that out?
I'd probably spread it out. CBD has a half-life somewhere around 25 hours. So I think that if you can do one in the morning, one in the evening, you'd probably notice the most sustained benefit to it. There may be some specific time applications to it, whereas when you're feeling stressed or feeling anxious, maybe you do it then. But just as kind of a general practice, I would probably spread it out.
So the quality of the source plant, of course, is important. Then the next step has got to be harvesting, right? I mean, how are you extracting? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the extraction is a big piece of the puzzle, and there's really two main methods of CBD extraction at this stage in the game. One is a CO2 extraction, and the other is an ethanol extraction.
Right.
And so the CO2 is going to be the safest with no residual solvents. So that's something you want to pay attention to, is how is this product being extracted?
How are you guys doing it?
And so at Trustbow, it's through a CO2 extraction. Again, third-party testing comes into play there. So our lab tests the product, but then we send it off to a third-party lab to test. And this is where that QR code comes into play. You'll see a third-party report that says it contains this, doesn't contain this. It's another interesting thing about the vertical integration that we put into play at Trustbow is that we use hand-selected strains of hemp, and so they are resistant to pesticides and herbicides. So there's no pesticides, no herbicides involved at all. which is great because, like we talked about, as a phytoremediator, it would be problematic if those things are in there, if the heavy metals are in there, and so want to test for all those types of things.
You don't want high concentrations of that stuff distilled down into a pill you're going to take.
Right, exactly. And all this is manufactured in an FDA-registered food grade, GMP certified facility. And then every product, again, tested for accuracy, for potency, for purity, and has that U.S. hemp seal of approval on it as well.
So thinking, summarizing, there's extraordinary benefits to supplementation, and yet we've got a world of it that you have to really know what you're doing to get the benefit out of it. So I really appreciate you sharing all this with us. A lot to think about, and no doubt, though, from what you've said, make it a little bit more, beneficial in navigating the waters. So thanks for sharing your time and expertise on this topic. It's definitely something that can be life-changing, but you have to do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure, and I do hope it's been helpful to someone out there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
CBD has become a part of many people's lives. I'm happy to share with you this deep expertise around CBD that Tim brought so that you can make the best decision for you on which CBD might serve your interests. This concludes episode 3. As you can see, this topic of supplementation has so many facets to it, and that's what made it, for me, an absolutely riveting experience to go through this journey, talk to all these people, get these varying points of view. We're only in episode 3 of 9, so we have a ways to go in this journey. Excited to be here with you for it. Again, I want to encourage you, knowing the information that's here and what value it can provide for your life, own Supplements Revealed. We have a variety of packages. Pick the one that's right for you, and you're going to find that you'll be really glad to have this information available to you whenever you want it. Thanks for being here in episode 3. We'll see you on the next episode coming up soon.
Marketing behind supplements is convincing people to go buy the supplements, but it's not educating people as to why they need the supplements in the first place. You're just putting a Band-Aid over it, you're still not addressing the root cause of the situation.
So what are the healing properties of inflammation?
So antimicrobial, so viruses, fungus, yeast, some types of bad bacteria, and it goes after hardcore stuff. I've seen people have success with herpes and HPV and shingles. I would say most people are so tired of suffering from chronic things that are keeping them stuck that they're willing to try it.
What's really interesting is, again, if you go back to that health food store, they'll tell you who manufactures their product and who doesn't. People that aren't manufacturing their product or co-manufacturing, there's nothing wrong with that. There's some great co-manufacturers, but the brand really needs to take the extra step to go deeper on the quality. I think transparency needs to be driven by the consumer, and if you're a smart consumer, you'll demand transparency.